Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the council meeting of Wednesday, the 3rd of May. Welcome to the councillors, the staff, media, and all those who are listening in at home. I'll call for apologies, but there is none because we're all here. I'll call for extraordinary business. I know of none, but we've got an extraordinary business. Oh, declarations of interest on today's agenda. No. Confirmation of the minutes on item number 4 on page 3. Is there any alterations or additions on page 3? For accuracy, page 4, page 5, page 6. So I'd like to move that the minutes of the 19th of April council meeting be taken as read and confirmed. Councillor Cameron, Councillor McMillan. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Move now to agenda items, and we have item number 5, which is the Heritage Mid-Canterbury Working Group. Welcome. Danielle. Oh. Oh no. Not quite there yet. We'll receive those minutes first before we do it. Someone like to move that we receive the minutes of the Heritage Mid-Canterbury Working Group meeting held on the 23rd of March 23. Councillor Cameron. Councillor Todd. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Item number 6.
Can I ask?
Yeah. Councillor Lover.
I was just going back on the first report about the working group. Can they make decisions at this working group, or does the decisions or alterations to decisions have to come back through council to approve? And it's just going back to the interpretation panels. There's a change in the panels. There was an agreement with, I think it went through council, that the panels that we have on East Street were going to be rotated and changed every so often. And I see that there's going to be further panels created and installed on their own frames. And this is more than what was originally decided by council. Was it last year or whatever? So that change, should that come back through council, because it is predominantly it is going to make a difference to East Street. You know, we want a town with a modern, vibrant centre, and if you're going to have these, if we're going to keep adding to all these panels, it could change the look of the centre of town, and that's what I'm concerned about, because what's there is really good, and we don't want to keep adding every other week or year more and more of them.
It's just dealing with the fact of the Heritage Mid-Canterbury Working Group. It's a working group. They can't make decisions. Their decisions will come. Their recommendations will come to council, which should be in their terms of reference. But I might. Sarah, you got the correct?
Yes, I possibly can't comment on the terms of reference, comment off the top of my head, but with regards to the location of the additional panels, it was thought to be the wider areas, like potentially one in the Domain, further down East Street, and the rationale of not rotating the existing panels are they're put in a location that signifies the location that's in. The panel relates to the location. So if you had a Domain story in front of Burnett Street, it loses the impact of having a Domain story about the water wheel, for example. So that was the intention. It's not common practice to rotate panels of significance. They stay in the location they are, but it's not going to be overcrowding the CBD either. It's wider afield that we thought this would be that, where they'd be located, And the other thing was, in terms of this coming year's budget, there's $8,000 that council has put forward in the draft annual plan for the working group to spend on such things as interpretive panels. And that doesn't stretch too far, understandably.
Hamish?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you say, the working group can only make recommendations. The recommendations, though, have to be contained in a resolution. The way I read these minutes, there are only 2 resolutions in the working parties' minutes. One is to change the Turton's Accommodation House Interpretation Panel. That is a recommendation for council. And the other is to prepare a report on the contents of the time capsule. That is also a recommendation to council. Both those recommendations are for council to consider. The commentary in the advisory group minutes around a suggestion of not rotating the frames is only commentary. It isn't a recommendation to council. It isn't a decision. Nothing will change until there is a more formal way of approaching council to resolve that matter. So the mere fact that it's in the commentary in the minutes wouldn't be enough to change a previous council position. So that might have been the expectation, but it will require a more formal process than just the commentary.
So, the terms of reference, they will have terms of reference, no doubt?
Yes, we can look that up. Philippa might have such a thing.
I understand they don't, but generally when a working group is set up, the terms of reference are simply defined in the purpose of setting that working group up. This, I see from the minutes, this group has asked for some terms of reference to be developed. They'll be fairly broad, I would expect, and just relate to what the working group is doing, and it will have to come back to council to approve those terms of reference too. So they don't have actual terms of reference at the moment, and I understand when they were initially set up as a working group, it was simply to deal with the street plaques, but their role has expanded a little bit with council's agreement over the last couple of years.
Perhaps that's an action, is that the working group terms of reference get developed and come to council. Because I do notice, I think that the members have been changing on the working group. Yeah. So the terms of reference would be helpful, I think, for guidance for us in the future. Councillor Cameron.
Just to reinforce that, the terms of reference are being undertaken at the moment, and it was a minute from our last October meeting. We've only just had one meeting subsequent to October. And with regards to the interpretive panels and where they are located, we had best practices which we're learning as we go along, best practices not to move the panels, they stay put, and we can consider putting things up in other areas, not necessarily down the CBD, but that would not go ahead without consent, oversight from the council.
Council approval.
But we are trying to develop a world-class sort of message and put us on, and so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, understand what you're trying to achieve, and let's do it in the formal manner, and it'll be clear for everyone. Okay, so did I put that motion? Don't think I did. Did we receive those minutes?
Yes, you did.
We did. Okay. Item number 6 then, time capsule finalisation. And Danielle and Connor, anything further to add to your report, or we can go to questions?
Don't believe there's anything further, so happy to go to questions.
Okay. Councillors, questions? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, through the chair. Great report. I'm on page 12 under 11 Ashburton the People, and I see that you have got under B list of clubs, organisations, churches, etc., which will be quite a big list to get together, but I was just wondering if you were aware that Safe and Mid Canterbury have produced a new Helping Hands booklet which has most of that information collated in it, and it may be worth, I know it's there, it's sitting in a box, well, it was sitting in a box last week, so it's only just arrived, but it may be worth inquiring to whether you could use that, because it may have a whole lot of information in it, unless you've collated all that already.
Thank you for that. I think that will be a good idea to look at that booklet, because not everything has been physically collated. We've made indications. We made a list of final contents, but we don't have the physical items all in hand yet. So that definitely might be something for us to look at. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, we had just been planning to go to Citizens Advice Bureau and print off any list that they have, but that sounds like a better option.
I just have one question. Has the Youth Council been involved in this, putting the items together, and if not, why not? Council.
No, the Youth Council
Councillor
hasn't been.
I didn't realise we had an active youth council until very recently to involve them in putting items together. There was no members, as I understand, until quite recently.
Councillor
And we were given a very tight deadline for the completion of the time capsule.
Councillor Ellis might be able to update on the Youth Council.
Presently, yes, we had 18 here last night, but I believe there was a youth council, but it had very low membership up till then, so.
Yep. Should we be involving the youth councils?
I think our main plan for engaging with the community is the what do you like best about Ashburton District promotion. And with that, I think we also need to think about how we're reaching people to complete this little survey thing, because the youth probably not going to be doing things handwritten, dropping things off to council, or probably aren't even on Facebook. So that's something we're going to consider as part of that.
So they could
activity.
feed in part through the community avenue.
Absolutely. So the intention is that every council facility, EA Network Centre, the library, gallery, museum and Mount Hutt Memorial Hall all has a drop-off location and the slips necessary to write your sentence. What is the best thing about living in the Ashburton district? So that was our engagement for youth and all citizens. It is a project that could be bigger than Ben Hur, and we don't have the size of a box that could contain Ben Hur, or the resources to spend too much more time on this project. So we think through the working group and councillors' input that we have got a good representative sample of items and objects that will stand the test of time, because they're got to be still there and present in 50 years' time, and through best practice, which Danielle and Connor will be in charge of. It will be packaged securely and appropriately, and there'll be something to open in 50 years' time or at a set date.
Councillor Lovett.
I've just got a couple of points. Just looking, you've got the floor plans of the building. Can we have perhaps a bit of the story of the building process, why it's wood, not metal, and some of the hiccups along the journey in building this building? We've had weather events, we've had some of the McElroy bars stuck on a ship in the sewers. Just a brief paragraph, just the journey of the building, during the building. It would be quite good to look back on it. And the other one was, there's a recipe book here from Rural Women, and women have played a big part in this district, and the Mayor's got it up here, and there's some great recipes in that, and they did ask early on in the piece whether they were allowed to put that book in some of the prices of food and relevant information right within the book. Can that be added to what we've got, if there's enough room in the box?
Sarah?
I can talk to the first part. We're containing, our committee secretary is going to be providing all the resolutions of council to sort of step by step through the process of the build. We thought that was a factual and better way, as opposed to an person's interpretation of the positives or challenges that we've had with regards to this building. So we think we've captured that way. With regards to the recipe book, and Councillor Cameron might want to further elaborate on this. It was discussed at the working group. The thought and thinking around the group was we wanted things specific to Ashburton. So there are in every location and region, there's clearly women groups that play a significant part in our history, but the recipes themselves are very unlikely to be Ashburton specific, and hence why that wasn't proceeded to be included.
Councillors, it's your decision what you want in it. So if you want a recipe book in, then you'll need to speak up. Councillor Cameron.
The recipe book is lovely, Mr Mayor, and I know that's a particular project of yours. And I support the rural woman and I enjoy the recipes, but the fact remains is we have a very small box. So if we're going to put, and we're also waiting for for a suggestion from Arawhena or Runanga to put in that box, and we haven't had that yet. And so if you want to put the recipe book in, what are we going to take out is my question, because we've done dummy runs and it's full. Am I correct? Through the chair.
If I could answer that, looking at the current situation, point 7 under background, we actually have the dimensions of the cavity, the outer box and the inner box. In terms of the enclosures, inside of the inner box, the plan will be to have, it's almost like a Russian nesting doll. There will be a box for all of the district information and printed materials, and a box on top which has mainly the objects' contents separated from those. So remembering that there is a further separation within the stainless steel capsule to consider for fitting things inside.
Recipe book in or out? Councillor.
I've got a couple of questions, but I think the explanation where it's not specific to Ashburton probably makes sense that it's left out. I know it was a special request, and they had requested something else to celebrate their centenary, Rural Women's Centenary. Yeah.
I have the minutes of the meetings here as well.
But yes, it's quite a chunky book, and I think if we had to leave something out, that would be a shame. But I have a question. Before we just had some photographs passed around. I'm guessing there will be some of them, you know what they're all about, but some of them I think need some explanation. So will there be an explanation of the photograph with them, or are they just going in as photographs?
Thank you for that question. I think we will include a very short caption for each one to give the context. That will be quite useful. Thinking in decades' time, people may not recognise a lot of those landmarks, so that'll be an important thing to include.
Thank you. And I have another question, if that's okay. So there's also plans for the records of the opening of the building to go into the time capsule. So it's obvious that the time capsule's not going to be placed in the building on opening, at the official opening. So will it come in a few weeks afterwards? How does that work?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the intention is that everything that we have available on the opening will be placed, the time capsule will be placed in the wall, but it won't be, I guess, secured off in terms of plaster finish or whatever the final wall lining's going to be until the time where we can collate the final publications regarding the opening and put them in. So officially, yes, but there might be a slight, second placing.
Councillor Cameron.
I'd just like to make, I can't see any more questions, I'd just like to make a...
There's more questions.
Can I just make it, I'll wait till you finish then.
Question. We'll get a motion.
Oh, well, can I move the motion?
And then you can make it. Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I just have a question. Point 6 says the group wanted to include items that were unique to the district, and you've achieved that. We're representative of today, you've achieved that. And in some cases, we're not likely to exist in 50 years' time. Has the working group thought about cigarettes or vaping?
I'd be happy to answer that. We had a think about it, where it was brought up in one of our meetings, and we concluded that having a tobacco product or a vape inside of the time capsule would probably not be good for long-term preservation. If there was a breakdown of a cigarette or if it was a vape, if it had vape liquid in it, of course that could leak onto other contents. So in terms of long-term preservation, I don't think including those would be suitable.
Okay. And another question is, it's silent on the date to be opened, and I think going back some months ago we had a date for it to be opened, and we looked at, was it 2078 or 2076, and you might be able to elaborate what those dates are representative of.
Yes, of course. So 1876, in that year the Ashburton County was formed, and in 1878 the Ashburton Borough was formed. So 2076 and 2078 would line up with the 200th anniversary of each of those events. Which would, councillors, probably signal a good date for that to be opened. Otherwise, if we don't set the date, I believe that the residents of the future, which we won't be, you might be, won't know when to open this capsule and see what we have preserved for them. So any thoughts on a date? Councillor Cameron.
We did discuss the date and we didn't really know, but we thought the building was 50 years. Have we made that up, or was that something that we understood? Or
Hamish?
No, you haven't made that up, but it's an imprecise
yes,
number that signifies, many decades into the future. So I think you're free to choose
whatever date
any date in and around that sort of general
round
time.
number
And
or whatever.
that's right. And I would have thought that the suggestion that one of the dates of the founding of the forerunners to the council probably makes more sense than an arbitrary 50 years from day one.
Yeah, good suggestion. Yeah.
Was there an actual date it was formed, or just a year? Do you know?
There will be a date that it was formed. I can't quite remember the exact day off the top of my head, but it will be in the local newspapers or the New Zealand Gazette for when those two foundings occurred. So we will be able to get a precise date for that.
Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. And of those two dates, which are only 2 years back, do you guys see one as more significant than the other, I suppose? Which, historically for Ashburton, which would see as of the most importance?
Thank you. I think it all depends on your perspective of whether the rural district or the foundation and development of the town would be a suitable date for people in the future to find significant. So, I mean, the foundation of the Ashburton Borough might be a good choice, but equally the county might. But I wouldn't worry too much about offending one group over which one is picked, I think.
Hamish?
Mr Mayor, I wonder if there'd be some logic that council might like to consider along the lines of the later date meant that both founding councils were formed, and that 2078 would encompass both rather than going in 2076 and having to single one of them out.
Good suggestion. Councillor Cameron?
I was going to move the motion and add the 2078 date to the motion. If anybody else, if there's no other questions.
I just have one more question. When it's sealed, what will stop someone from opening it early? How will it be sealed? Is it locked or just...
Through you, Mr Mayor. The final wall finish is yet to be determined with regards to the architects and logic group, so we're not sure about that, but I guess it's the council officers in terms of building ownership that will ensure that it is secured and not opened. It will be not able to be tampered with in any way, but how it actually gets opened and when will be in the control of future council staff.
Okay. Councillor Cameron, I think I'm up to you now.
Can I move the motion, please? The council adopts.
Would you like to add in the date?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, floor's yours.
Council adopts the final selection of items listed within points 9 to 13 for inclusion within the Ashburton Library and Civic Centre Te Pataka o ka Tuitui Te Wā Aroa a Hinepaka time capsule. And the capsule was opened in 2078 and the actual date is to be confirmed.
Moved. Councillor Cameron, do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Lovett, open for debate. I think you've done a tremendous job of putting this together, seeing some of the items that have been circulated round, they fit the bill for the criteria you had. Good explanations as to why you've got it there. I think you've done a great job, and looking forward to the opening of the building and having this put in. Opening of the building with this time capsule being put in. Yeah, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I support this as well. I think the working group should be applauded in all the work that they've done to get us this far. I know everyone has an opinion on what should go in, but I think you've done a fantastic job. So happy to support this.
Councillor Cameron.
I want to write a reply.
I've just checked to see if there's any other speakers before you get a right of reply. Any speakers for or against the motion? No, right of reply.
I've been involved with the working group and it played a very small part, and I'd like to congratulate the whole team, especially the peer sitting to my left, for their professional way that they've conducted this exercise, because it's been a very challenging role and very challenging task with a lot of input. So congratulations, and I think if we're around in 2078 we'd be very excited to open it up. So thank you.
I'm getting excited. I may not remember I was excited, but
I don't know how grumpy you'll be then. I'm going to put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Well done.
good job.
Yep. Item number 7, naming conventions and charging for meeting rooms. Who's doing it? Sarah. Sarah, welcome. Anything further to add to your report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I hope it's very self-explanatory, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions, councillors? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, through the chair. Another good report. I'm on page 19, just under on number 0.7 about engaging with Arawhenua on the naming, which I think is great. Just wondering, does that involve the Ngāi Tahu mapping, I don't know what you call them, the Kahuru Manu who came to our museum? I think they had an exhibition last year or even the year before with all the Ngāi Tahu mapping sites, only because when I look on that, and there's been a bit of talk about this up in Methven, but Ōpuki is obviously Mount Hutt, but there's also another name for that mountain, so it would be quite nice if while you're speaking with Arawhenua, if you could somehow engage with that Kahuru Manu, and I was just wondering if you would be able to do that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that was probably the document, because I worked with, it was a multi-team approach in terms of this report, and Shireen from the Art Gallery had quite a bit of input into that, and she was using those names as where the themes came from. There were a significant number of rivers and lakes within that list, so we didn't want to select location A over location B without input from Arawhenua, so hence we're sort of suggesting themes and then getting their input as to the names. We also wanted to ensure that the names were also significant for the population or the community as a whole, because there is some locations that as officers we had never heard of, but they were significant back in the day. So the balance of trying to get everyone to see a little slice of their world within the building in terms of the naming of the meeting rooms is our intention, but we've got to follow process and get some input from Arawhenua to do so.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Have you considered giving some of the names of our district, and I bring your attention to all the schools. We have 18 schools I think I've covered, and I'll give you some examples: Phaeton, Dorrie, Rakaia, Lauriston, Methven, Mount Summer, Springburn, Mayfield, Hinds, Dorrie, Wakanui, Lauriston, Burra, Hampstead, Netherby, Ellington. These schools represent the whole district pretty much, and I felt that that would be a way of acknowledging all of the district. And that's my first question. If you...
To answer that, no, we hadn't thought of schools as one of the themes. No, sorry.
And my second question was, have you considered that rivers and lakes is a very, very well used right through the Canterbury region? Lakes are another Rakaia room or another Rangitata room. You can have them. I think there's plenty of, that's a common, it's a very common name now to be calling it by a river. It's overused. And my last question was, why are we using terminology such? I'm all in favour of talking with the Arawhanua Runanga about the pronunciation and the correct usage of the language, but we've used the words such as officers will then engage with Arawhanua as to a list of names that we could use. Wouldn't we be better to engaging with them as to a list of names we wish to use? And then the district council has put out its thoughts are put out, and then we get discussion rather than going with an open book, which, we're not actually putting a list of names out there that we think. We're actually probably just, if you understand, there's a slight difference of terminology.
Through Ms. Mees, as I understand the point, we would prefer, our recommendation is that we have that more open engagement with mana whenua as to what they feel is appropriate for this part of New Zealand. But again, this is only recommendations to council. If you feel the approach is wrong, if you feel the physical suggestions are not correct, then it's for council to challenge that in debate and resolve how you wish to go. But our suggestion to you is to engage with a slightly more open book, and we think that the major natural features of the district still make sense for us in our building, regardless of whether or not someone else has used the name of a river. These are our rivers, they're our features, and our recommendation is that we use them accordingly. But again, it's before you to resolve as council.
Further to that, through you, Mr. Mayor, the intention was to also, where possible, and whether it is using a piece of artwork from the existing council collection, to match the room names where possible, or it might be that we have reproduced historical photos of the use or the area in the rooms as well. So we thought that the artwork within the room could potentially link to the name of the room, so it has a more meaningful impact as opposed to another set of names without the corresponding design with it.
Councillor Miller, question?
Yes, I have got a question. Just on the fees or the meeting room hire charges, do we currently charge anything for meeting room hireage in the library now?
No.
No. So this will be a new charge. And in most of the groups that are hiring the meeting rooms here, and I know it will be different once the new library is open, are they sort of non-for-profit community groups that are using them?
There's very limited rooms in the current library, so we don't have much. We don't anticipate people using the library currently to feel like this would impinge upon their use, because they generally all fall into the category 8A, which is the partnership or the programs groups. So very few would be disadvantaged, but with regards to the use of the meeting rooms, we did feel that that tiered approach based on use was appropriate, with the annual plan including sort of the maximum rate figures and then the ability for officers to determine what level a group should fit within.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's sensible. And just another question. So will that be a booking system set up so they'll just go to reception or ring reception or email to book a meeting room? Yeah,
through the mayor, there's a few unknowns on that currently. officers are definitely working on it. The meeting rooms themselves, in terms of the ad hoc bookings, there will be panels just on the entranceways of the doors, so the ad hoc bookings are simple and easy. If there was a regular booking or something of longer duration, half a day or something like that, whether that's done online and then by workflow approved by officers, or whether it is to contact customer services in the first instance, we look up the system and say yes or no. So those minor details are yet to be resolved, but absolutely we want it to be accessible, we want it to be used and as simple as possible.
Thank you.
Well, at the end of questions, one final question to follow on from Councillor Wilson's suggestion that the names of schools get used. The first recommendation here, number 1, doesn't allow that. So the question is, how can we change that first recommendation to assist Councillor Wilson in having the names of the rooms after the schools or something similar?
Through Mr Mayor, it would depend on the council to now resolve something. So if there's a recommendation on page 17, if that didn't meet with the will of council, then whoever moves seconds and now votes would need to amend that. It just has to be part of the resolution that's formally moved. Yeah.
Yeah. So if Councillor Wilson wanted to move something along the lines he was suggesting before, now's the time to do it.
I've just. I've got my light on, but I would like to do the recommendation we've actually got here, because I think there's been a lot of thought into it, and I like the concept, because if you go to the schools in this district, there is a lot of schools that have disappeared off the map. And if you go to district names, a lot of them have disappeared off the map as well over time. So how do you judge one against the other, which is more worthy of being on meeting room doors? And I actually think the concept we've got here is being well done by staff, and it will match all our artwork and everything. I just think it was brilliantly put together myself, and I'm quite happy to recommend all these recommendations sitting here as it is.
You wish to move?
I wish to move.
You wish to move, and Councillor Wilson. No, I'll need a seconder.
Which one is she moving?
As recommended there. You would have the ability to make an amendment.
I'd like to second that.
You've moved and seconded. It's open for debate. The way I read this, those rooms are going to get numbers. They're not getting names, they're going to get numbers. Apart from rivers and lakes, we only have 3 rivers, so there's 3 rooms done. We do have some lakes. Councillor Lovett's comment about schools come and go, yes they do, but the names never do. The mentioned names of the areas of the district have disappeared over time. I can't recall any. I'd like to, I won't be supporting number 1. I'd like to see the names of the smaller areas of our district, and I was thinking along the lines of the Wakanui, the Lowcliffs, the Winslows, the Eifeltons, Animas, Hatfields, etc., which don't get mentioned anywhere from the district. And then I heard Councillor Wilson's suggestion of the schools, which represents the whole district. They are scattered over the whole district, town and country. Excluding the secondary schools, just the primary schools, and I like the idea, so I won't be voting for this recommendation number 1. Councillor Wilson.
Further to that, I probably am using the schools because I don't want us to be confused between English and Te Reo names, because that is background noise, I think, to the name of the we're looking to use. If there is, some of the schools will have bilingual names. That will be in place. But I'm just pushing the school thing because I think too the other big factor we miss out is if a room is named after a school, that school will take ownership of that room, and you may get more engagement from the schools coming into the library, with regards to artworks or whatever happens. It's a great way to engage every school in the district.
Speakers for or against the motion? Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, I like the idea of the schools as well. I think it's our future, and there's every chance that some of those pupils will end up in that building. And maybe school colours could be incorporated with the artwork, just as a suggestion.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support, and I'll bring to your attention on page 19, number C, so the room themes could be local flora and or fauna, and I'm going back a few years now, but in the first my first term of council, when we were talking about how this building, I think all the councillors gave their ideas. A lot of it was based on local flora and fauna, and we had a submission from, I think it was the Hakateri Marae Committee, who said they would like to see the local flora and fauna incorporated into the building, and maybe even Barron Square at that time. So that's why I'm supporting this.
Councillor Bryant.
I've got just one question, if I can, and it is basically how many rooms do we have to name? 27. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy with the recommendation, but I would like to be in a situation that when we are talking, that we can give some direction regarding the names rather than go with an open book, so that we can get, because it is our building, and I think we should have some control in the direction of the names that we give.
I'm going to go to you now, Hamish, but there's a sort of a question. How are we going to know the names before you go to Arawhenua with them?
I have to give that some
separate report back to council.
Yes, we'll have to give that some thought as to how we would give effect to that direction. Certainly we had been thinking of a more open conversation with Arawhenua. If it's council's desire that we go and propose some names and get their sort of feedback or input on that list, and if council wish to see those names first, then we will have to bring that back to you before we engage.
I think there's a will there for that. Yep. If the motion's passed as it is. Councillor Cameron.
Just a question on process. Have we got an amendment to the motion, or do we vote on this motion and then we bring another motion in if this fails, or how does that work?
If this fails, number one, I'm going to take them in three parts.
Yes.
If number one fails, then there could be another motion.
Okay, so we don't amend that motion.
Well, you can amend this one if you wish. You can. You can amend.
What's to be gained from that? I mean, we didn't amend it, so you and Richard didn't amend it, so what would be gained?
Well, only one person can move amendment, but what you'll gain from it is change the recommendation to the schools, if that was what the amendment was about.
Equally, through Mr. Chair, if it was lost, then we have no convention approved by council, and that would then allow someone to move something else.
Sort of
so you'd get to the same
Get
point.
to the same place, okay.
Any further speakers for or against the
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to highlight that recommendation 1 it includes that the names, what are to be decided, are in English and Te Reo. It doesn't state that it's lakes and rivers per se, but that's what we were intending to go to Arawhenua with. So the recommendation 1 is English and Te Reo. So if you only wanted English meeting room names, then that would be the amendment to that.
I don't think we're concerned about whether it's English or Te Reo. I think we're concerned about the name of the room.
So then it's possibly another recommendation to set the themes, as opposed to changing recommendation 1.
If this recommendation is lost, then we'll have to have another recommendation.
Just for clarification.
I don't believe recommendation 1, if you're happy with English and Te Reo, on whatever theme.
Yeah, I think I understand now. Your thing of splitting the recommendation, or you'd like direction on whether it's English or Te Reo or both.
No. What we're saying, recommendation 1 doesn't say it's rivers or flora and fauna, not in the recommendation.
No.
So if you want schools, yet that would be another add-on to the bottom, because recommendation 1 is just that it's both in English and Te Reo, whether it be Netherby School or whatever, or not Netherby School, Netherby, that would then be in English and Te Reo, as opposed to
Correct.
Rangitata being...
That's right.
Yes.
And through Mr Mayor, I'm reading that the same way. If this was passed and there was direction to use school names, we would be seeking the Te Reo name for that school and using that as well as whatever other name it might currently be known as. So you wouldn't just see Pandava School, you'd see Pandavas and the Te Reo name on the meeting room.
So I might go back to you, Sarah, and get clarification. What does the alphanumeric naming convention mean?
That refers to the point that's 4.4, so that there's ground floor, so the ground floor rooms are G1, and then there'll be the name. It's just for the purpose of ensuring direction and directional signs, especially if there's large or a large number of names. We think in terms of signage it might be useful to have numbers, and also so that people know that when they get invited to a second floor room, it's really apparent that they need to get to the second floor to attend that room.
Agree. So this recommendation number 1 does not stipulate whether it's a river, a stream, a mountain or a school. It's silent on that. So there would, if this passes, then we could have a new recommendation suggesting a school or suggesting a river or etc. Yeah. Right. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Through the chair, do we put that recommendation now as number 4, like we have the districts named, or we do that separately?
We can make it number 4 if you wish. I think we have
So,
a
excuse me,
recommendation on the Philippa.
through the chair, there is a recommendation, as I understand, moved all 3 parts by councillors Lovett and Macmillan. There wasn't a decision prior to that to take the motion in part, so that would have to be retrospective. And with the mover and seconder's agreement, you could add an extra clause.
Yep. The mover and a seconder, would they be happy to add another clause, number 4, giving direction on whether it was a school, a river or whatever?
I move this thinking. Can I speak to it?
Yeah.
I moved this thinking that we were going with our rivers and flora and fauna, because that was what the whole build has been around right from the word go. It was a whole complete story, our building and everything about it, our park leading east, bearing east, going into it. It was all designed around all these natural elements. And to really go against what we're doing, to me, doesn't make sense. And how do you judge which school is better than another school to put in here? And I think that leads to confusion. So I kind of like this as its whole story as it is.
We haven't got the movers not accepting another addition, so if we pass this motion, we'll look for another motion, recommendation after that. So any further speakers for or against? We'll leave it as it is. I'll put them in, take them one by one. Number 1, that council adopts the alphanumeric naming convention, that all booking meeting spaces within Te Pataka o Ka Tui Tui Te Rua Ahana Paka, they're the new library and civic centre, both have English and Te Reo names wherever possible. I'm putting the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Number 2, that council adopts a tiered charging structure, free, half rates, full rates for meeting rooms hire for external users based on their purpose and or community benefit. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. The council delegates to the chief executive all future operational matters and changes to meeting room users or availability, Appendix 1, ensuring council activities are prioritised over external bookings. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Recommendations carried. Is there a number 4? Councillor Wilson.
I'd like to propose that we put a number 4 and that the council's staff, led by the CEO, investigate the use of school names for the meeting rooms and possibly rivers and flora and fauna. So that gives and comes back to council with those potential names.
Have a seconder for that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Cameron. Moved Councillor Wilson. Second Councillor Cameron. Open for debate. Oh, Hamish.
So just like to clarify what council understands our approach to Arawhenua will be. So as I understand the motion, the potential is to use primary schools, rivers and rivers and lakes across all the meeting rooms. When we approach Arawhenua, are we asking them that they agree, or are we simply asking them to provide te reo names for our list? What engagement process are we envisaging?
I think it would be the latter. They were asking for the te reo conversion of those names from English to te reo that the council has selected, and if they have any objections to that would be the time to say. Councillor Cameron.
Just in speaking to the motion, I liked your suggestion, Mr Mayor, about the districts, but I think the schools reflect the districts because they're named after the districts. But in speaking to the motion and responding to Councillor Lovett's comment about the theme through the building being flora and fauna and things, I think also it's important that the building is seen as a community building, and I think if you incorporate the regions throughout the district, throughout Ashburton District Council, then it will be seen as a community building. If you have, and this is a small thing, the names of the meeting rooms, but if some of the meeting rooms are called, Low Cliff or whatever, then the whole district is involved in that building. So I think that's also has a positive side as well.
Yep.
This is my.
Thank you. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, and I agree on that. And I think we need to look back to the first recommendation, which had both English and te reo Māori names wherever possible. So that's kind of the key really here, because some of those areas, Wakanui's known as Whakanui, we all understand that, but there may not be a Māori name for Low Cliff or Methven or any of those places. So I think we're correct in that suggesting that we use the district or the schools or those district areas are fine. They may not have a te reo name, that's fine as well, but also maybe having and as Councillor Wilson said, having the flora and the fauna and maybe the rivers, etc. included as well will give us a good balance of those names.
Yeah, the recommendation number 1 has at the end of it wherever possible. So if there is no te reo name, then there's no te reo name. Yeah, exactly, yeah. And Councillor Wilson, we've got 27 rooms to name. How many schools was there?
18, but I put the remaining missed a couple out. So.
Yeah. So there's probably room for everything.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, the naming of the top floor, the smaller meeting rooms just in the staff area, that was proposed to be a slightly separate process. We intended it to be flora and fauna, but that we wanted to engage with our staff regarding that.
Right.
Yes, but council's in a different place.
We're naming the rooms. Yep. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. In answer to what we should be taking to Arawhenua, maybe we could say to them that this is our direction. Can you give us some guidance on te reo names and what are your thoughts about it? But by saying that this is our preferred direction sort of gives them a pretty clear idea that we're liking this.
It's a starting place. It's a starting point. Yeah.
Yeah, but not
in concrete.
Not discounting there or saying we're not interested in what you think.
No, definitely.
So that's just what I was going to clarify. Are we giving direction that we're not going to consult with Arawhenua, or we're just going to, okay.
We will consult with Arawhenua with a list of preferred names. Further speakers for or against? Councillor Lovett.
I'm just thinking about, like, instead of like school names, you've got creeks running from like the main road right down to the sea on both sides and probably coming up. And those streams and that water races actually connect up all those lost communities and schools that have gone over the years, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. That's the connection, that water through our district. More so than schools shut down, they go to a bigger school, then that shuts down, and that's where I was coming from with the creeks run, and that's when we originally looked at this building. It's that infrastructure that's going through these communities that hinge it all together, and the tree, Tina Parker, that was the milestone at the top of it, and to me, sort of going off other directions, we're kind of losing that value we put on this building right from the very start.
Just something to add there, Sarah?
I just thought of a possible way forward is in terms of we can look into the number of primary schools names within the district, and we can also look into the areas within the district if it's not the schools, and then we can put those two lists to the PCG so that this point can be finalised out of this particular point in time, and we can move forward if that's the solution.
Yep, we won't put that in the resolution, but that's the intent. Philippa, could you read back the resolution if you've got it there, please?
I may not be able to read it back exactly. I'm sorry, I was going to ask for clarification, but what I have written is that officers investigate the use of the district's primary school names, flora, fauna, rivers and lakes. I don't know whether that was your intention or...
Yeah. And with those, it's captured it with a report coming back to PCG Group. Captured what you've got, Councillor Wilson? Yeah. About to put the motion.
Sorry, I just have a question, because in the report on page 19, under B, it says that the only level 1 meeting room could be named after our largest mountain, Mount Hutt or Puki, and we have not mentioned mountains in that. Do we need to?
Councillor Wilson, if you'd like to add that.
Yes, I'd like to add that in.
And the second, Councillor Cameron, happy with that?
Yes.
Right, captured. Councillor Wilson, right of reply.
Yeah. I'd like to just ensure that everybody understands that I'm still keen to, as Councillor Hooper, to go to Arawhenua and talk with them how these names do fit within our cultural narrative and that, but have some direction, because any good conversation you have to go with an opinion to the conversation, otherwise it's a one-way conversation, and I'm sure they will appreciate that we've got some ideas which they can have input into. And if schools don't have a te reo name, maybe that's an opportunity for that school to adopt a te reo name, or to get some guidance as to what would be a good one for them to have.
We put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Item number 8, reserve management plans, approval to consult. Tony, anything further to, is it Tony? Yeah. Tony, anything further to add to the report? Neil?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, just one thing further to add to this. The report was written before the workshop that we had with council last week with Nikki from Exist, and so just to reiterate that before we go out for consultation, we'll make sure that council does have a copy of the maps and the locations of all the different reserves. So that is going to cause a little bit of a delay to when we do consult. So it's likely to be early June at this stage.
Yep. Happy with that. Yep. Councillors, questions? No questions. There's a recommendation there. Someone like to move?
Oh, sorry. I've got a question.
Oh, question? Yep. Councillor Bryant.
Through the chair. With the workshop, we looked at the 125 reserves, or I forgot. I thought we were going to get a list. before we went any further. Is that correct?
So yes, through the chair, you will get a list. Ideally, you'll get a list and a map, so you can actually see the physical location of each reserve that has fallen under this category. So the team is still working through the actual gazetting and understanding what reserve has what status. So therefore, the list of 120 is still an approximate, but before we go out for consultation, we'll have that number pinned down.
We'll have the number of reserves and that map.
Yes, yep. Absolutely.
That's right. I will see it before it goes out for consultation.
Yes, absolutely, and we won't start consultation until that's done.
Okay, thank you. The recommendation in front of us, I would like to move. Councillor Brown.
I'm happy to move that.
Councillor Cameron. Open for debate. But Councillor Wilson.
I'd like to speak in support of it. I think it'll help to empower districts and reserve boards and to know what reserve land is around them, and communities to see that land can be used for its proper purpose.
No further speakers for or against. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Thank you. Item number 9, Economic Development Quarterly Report. Welcome, Simon. Simon, anything further to add to your report?
No, nothing further, but happy to take questions.
Take questions. Questions, councillors? Question on the 17A review. Who's going to undertake the desktop study? Which department does it? Tony's department. Okay.
Thank you, through the chair. So we had an external provider undertaking that piece of work for us. There's been a bit of a situation with work that they've returned, so we're just undertaking a bit of a review of that and making sure that it's fit for purpose before it comes to council. So there's a slight delay. Ideally, we'll have it to you by July.
July?
Yes.
We don't meet in July, I don't think.
No. Hopefully either before you go on holiday or as soon as you get back.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Councillor Cameron?
Just a quick question, through the chair. Background, work is underway with a number of investors, developers to bring new businesses and expand businesses in the Ashburton District. How is that going, please, Simon? What sort of response do you get normally?
We're working with a number of developers. It's difficult to put some of that work into a public forum because we're bound by a degree of confidentiality as we're working through funding agreements or land purchases. So that's the reason that we kind of make a generic statement.
That question a little bit. So is that quite an active part of your role at the moment?
It's reasonably, yeah. We've got a number of pretty interesting things in development at the moment, and as they become more publicly known.
Yeah,
so an example of that would be the Triangle development that we've been working alongside a couple of developers, Robert Grice and Justin Skelling. That's now coming, the land purchases have been done, so we can talk about that, and the leases have been signed on buildings, so we're able to talk an awful lot more about.
And attracting new business to this district, does that people respond positively to that when you try and attract new businesses to set up branches or move down here?
I think it's safe to say we've been quite reactive to date, and there's more we can do in that space. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, son.
We are in PX later on, so we could take that your question in public excluded for more clarification of what is happening.
Do you want me to write that down?
No, we can do that, I think. Yep. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just on page 41 under the events or placemaking and branding. So you've got the Glow in the Park happening. It's happening next month, isn't it? And you're needing sponsorship. So did the event last year run wholly on sponsorship?
It ran through some sponsorship and some regional event fund monies went into that as well. So, but this year the sponsor from last year's back. With a reduced level of funding, we're just confirming another headline sponsor, which should be in the next day or two that they lock in, and we've got a number of smaller sponsors. So I can provide a list of those sponsors to you later on in the week.
Thank you. And just another question, if that's okay. The Regional Event Fund, how many more application rounds will there be until that fund is finished up?
We think the October round will be the last round, but that's dependent on who applies and what sort of money is drawn down. Prior to this round, there was $48,000 left in the fund, so I'm imagining that will get soaked up fairly quickly. I can't honestly remember. We've had the REF meeting since this report was written, and I honestly can't remember how much the panel signed off on the end.
Thank you. And does council get a report on that Regional Event Fund through council meetings or activity briefings, or does that information, I mean, I was on the panel, so I knew what was going on. I'm not now, so I was just wondering if that information comes back through to council.
So each activity briefing, we're reporting on the activities that are going through it, but we don't report on the financials. So if you'd like to see the sort of running tally, I can certainly provide that. That's not a problem.
That would be helpful.
Wish to see that?
Yep. Yes, please.
Okay. Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. And something similar with the Glow in the Park event. We've got here that this event is under budgeted. It's sort of one of our flagship events now that council runs, and maybe we should be seeing the budget around this table and seeing where we're at and what's needed, because maybe because it was very successful last year as far as the public went. So yeah, I personally would like to see the budget around it and where we're at, and maybe we can help you out if we get to see that information.
Cool. Yeah, through Mr Mayor, we can certainly do that. I mean, this is an evolving event. Last year was its first ever, and it was an outstanding success. We're really conscious inside our organisation that it also relied on a very heavy volunteer component to deliver that event. And as it evolves, then the manner in which we can continue to rely on volunteers to make that event possible will also be a matter that will ultimately evolve it and need to be factored into future budgets. Can we rely on the same number of volunteers year after year? But it was certainly a huge success. It was intended at that stage to be a one-off, celebrating EA Network's 150th, but it was so successful that everyone said we must do that again. So here's the next iteration of what may well be an annual event now.
I've seen it advertised. I think it's planned for. It's got a date.
King's birthday weekend, Mr Mayor.
Queen's birthday.
Yeah.
King.
Sorry.
King.
I should know that.
At the same venue at the Timor.
Yeah, which is only a month away.
Correct.
Yeah. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Through the chair, just another question. This time, page 44, and just to do with the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, and getting NEETs into employment, and it looks like it's going very well so far. And I know this is a pilot until the end of June. When do you think you will hear if we're successful enough to run this again next year?
Someone may have a more specific answer, but the problem with this entire program is that the funding is on a year-by-year basis.
Right.
And so and there's a lot of requests of government to confirm a 3-year time frame for the money so that people can settle in and work over a 3-year period. Our pilot, because we entered the program after the 1st of July last year, just dovetails into the period ending 30 June this year, but that's true of every Mayor's Task Force for Jobs program in New Zealand. And if you might recall the significant tension in and around June last year when the government hadn't confirmed funding for the entire program as everyone was approaching 1 July, and the pressure that was creating on employed people and the benefit of the program for the community, etc., etc. So we are now just joining that kind of melee around the end of the financial year, and I think we would be confident that we will become part of the overall program because of the success of it. But until funding gets approved by the government, perhaps on a 3-year basis, we're in this continuing state of relative uncertainty.
You may recall Local Government New Zealand has talked to the Minister in charge of the monies for that program as needing more surety going forward. So the government is well aware of it, of that.
If I can just add as well, Mr Mayor, the programme is going really well. Sharon Watson, who's the youth coach, is doing a fabulous job with employers and young people alike out in our community, and working hand in glove with many other community organisations to support these young people who are probably the most at risk in our society. The numbers in this report are slightly wrong. We've got 9 placed into full-time employment, and that's the measure that we get measured on. There are a larger number of other successful outcomes, like driving licences achieved, young people into training that has also been achieved. That we're the report's a bit behind the 8 ball, so going really well. And we've got a meeting with the Mayor's Task Force at the end of May to talk about what we've achieved. Sharon's confident that we'll be up to 11 placements by the end of this week, so we're pretty much there to ticking off the contract that we've been given, this month, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's a minimum, and you can overachieve in this area. Yep. Yep. Just one question before I go to Councillor Lovett. Page 42, 11.4, talk about the website and ensuring the information on the website is accurate. What website is that?
It's the Experience Mid Canterbury website.
Right, thank you. Councillor Lovett.
I'm just going to follow on from the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. When they do a review, I know there's kids at college that will probably, their last year, that are going to drop out. In their review, could they look at that aspect to pick up some of those bottom achievers and go straight from school into some of these jobs or something, so they don't get lost sitting at home doing nothing, because that's where we want to capture them to, from there to there.
Through Mr Mayor, look, the general answer to that is yes, of course. The issue of the NEETs, non-employment training or education, isn't solved and then fixed for all time. It's a never ongoing treadmill. So as we make progress with individuals and as young people who otherwise might not have got into work or into training do so, there is always another group that has the same needs, and equally there are other opportunities that weren't present in the employment market later in the year as well. So it's just a continual process, and that's one of the reasons why all those associated with the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs would prefer a 3-year funding regime, so that they can give some certainty to the ongoing energy and effort to deliver the benefits of the program, rather than this sort of 12-month, almost not quite hand by mouth, but uncertain environment that they're in. But if we can get that funding approved, then of course the next cohort of kids that have the need will be as important to the program as those that are there now.
It's obviously some great benefits here, and it would be just good to capture the ones about to leave and get them straight in employment before they get those bad habits and not working. It would be great.
You another question?
Yeah, I just on the glow in the park, you're needing volunteers, and I'm just thinking, I was there for 2 days last year, 2 nights, helping out many hours, and whether something could go round the service clubs, because I'm sure, it's sort of starting now to get a bit late to get it in their systems, but I'm sure there's a lot of people there that would keenly come out and volunteer, but they don't know about it. And when I went back to my Lions Club, they said, they would have helped if they'd known, and there is a big volunteer group out there that would come on board and help.
I understand. My comments around the volunteers is really around the sustainability of it year in and year out.
I think you'll get that.
Yes, that's right. It wasn't so much focused on this next one in a month's time. It was that this fabulous event that the community has responded so well to, if it's to be an annual event, then you need a significant number of volunteers every year. That was the sustainability comment I was making, rather than saying the one in a month's time is short-handed. Yeah.
You'll get that buy-in if we get that story out there.
Just to comment on your Men's Task Force for Jobs and getting kids before they drop out of school. The Men's Task Force for Jobs is one way that kids can get into work. There's other ways too, and I'll give you the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Mere Task Force for Jobs is not going to be the only thing. There will be others the village needs to help as well. It's one angle. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Hey, Simon. I was going to ask about the website as well. The Mayor beat me to that one. So the social media site, is that mainly on Experience Canterbury social media platforms, or where does the weekly posting go? And what sort of content are you chucking up there?
So all the social media goes out through the existing Experience Mid Canterbury channels, which we pulled back in after Christchurch and Z withdrew from the contract.
Yeah.
So they're all established. They've got thousands of users. So the Facebook, Instagram. I believe there's a TikTok site that we're not posting on, but at the moment, but principally Facebook and Insta. And we're posting imagery of Mid Canterbury. We're posting events. We're posting operators who are doing interesting things, and we're trying at the moment, prior to bringing a staff member in to cover that space, we're trying to get 2 posts out a week at the moment, just to keep the engagement there with the community that are already tapped in. Obviously, once we get that person in and we can build a social media plan and strategy around what we're doing, that will get accelerated, considerably.
So if we looked up Experience Mid Canterbury on Facebook, we'd hit it.
Yep, I'm hopeful you would. If you don't, let me know.
Yeah. Cheers.
Question, Councillor Wilson. Question.
It's Pillar 7. I see connecting and supporting infrastructure. The update is no activities undertaken in this period for the pillar, but the council is doing activities, and that is looking after infrastructure, roading and telecommunications. So that is our core business, but it's good to see it down here as one of our economic drivers.
Yeah, and I think from the discussion the other day where we talked about the opportunities and the constraints with infrastructure, that's really where I'm looking for my team to be involved, not the day-to-day is done by the council as core business.
Looking for a mover for the recommendation that council receives the January, February and March 2023 Economic Development Quarterly Update.
I'd like to move that.
Seconded, Councillor Cameron. Open for debate, if you haven't had it already. Further debate. I'm going to put the motion. Councillor Cameron. So put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Item number 10, Ashburton Car Club Street Sprint Event, temporary road closure. Mark. And Neil. Anything further to add, Mark? It's all there.
No, nothing further.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Wilson.
Are all the health and safety requirements being met to our satisfaction with this event?
Yes, and historically that's been the case. They're very good at running the events and provide everything and do everything they're supposed to do. So, yeah.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. There's some roadworks or footpath works happening down around where this is going to be held at the moment. There's quite a few temporary fencing and road cones up. What's going to, because they normally block off all those with hay bales and things, have that been sorted out? What's going to happen?
Yes, there's been some work done around there. There's also some proposed work that's on hold until after the event. So we're not starting anything else until the event's finished, and they'll be sorting all that out. So, yeah.
Recommendation in front of you, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I'm happy to move the recommendation. These guys always do a fantastic job with what they organise and tend to make life pretty easy for our guys.
Like to read the recommendation?
Council permits the temporary road closure of Smallbone Drive, Robinson Street, Watson Street and McNally Street from 7 p.m. on Friday the 12th of May 2023 until 6 p.m. on Sunday the 14th of May 2023 to allow the street sprint meeting to be held.
Thank you. Moved Councillor Ellis, seconded.
I'd love to second that. It's a great event and it attracts a lot of people to our town. It adds value.
We put the, any further speakers for or against? Put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Item number 11. Thank you, gentlemen. Bancorp report. Page 51. Anything further to add?
Just that when we look at the interest rates, they've moved higher than the economists could ever predict. And at the Strategic Finance Forum last week, they said that the economists were saying how they had got it so very wrong. They're in uncharted waters, so to speak. So the official cash rates forecast to peak at 5.5% in about 3 weeks' time. That's what they're projecting. And ADC's interest costs are at the bottom quartile of all New Zealand councils lending, so borrowers. And over the last 2 years, the interest rate's been less than many other councils, benefiting from previous interest rate risk management decisions. So that's like taking out some of the fixed rate bonds for longer periods that were at very low rates at the time. So to mitigate or to keep our interest rate costs down at some stage, we need to take up another forward swap. So rather than taking it out at today's cost, which would be about 4.28%, if we take it out in February 25 to mature in April 29, it would be 3.77%, and that would give us more headroom on our lending and keep our interest rate costs down.
Thank you for that, Erin. Questions? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Just with regards to the new build, I understand the $20 million shovel ready, that's been eked out over a period of time as we go through, meet various land milestones in the building. Are we borrowing the money as we go along for the ADC's contribution to that, or have we borrowed that in advance?
There has been sales from within the commercial property area budgeted for the new build, so it's looking at funding it that way rather than all through lending.
And those sales have been undertaken already?
So far they have been, so the likes of the business estate and things like that have been.
And are they in these $3 million term deposit or whatever it is in there somewhere? Is that where that money is held?
Well, yes, last year we had to fund some of it already to be able to, because it was about, halfway through last year. So what's happening is, as the project's progressing, there's a certain percentage that we get back from the Otakara.
Yes.
And then the difference is funded by a council, and that is kind of as it goes along, it's being funded.
So my question really relates to, through the chair, next September, October, or whenever the build is finished, will we have to borrow a lump sum to pay it off, so to speak?
There's also reserves within the property area that we can call on if necessary, and at a last resort we would have to loan fund.
Because my question relates around to, first of all, quantity, how much is that going to have to be done then, and the interest rate of that. When you look at this report, the interest rates are, you just commented on it. Yeah.
They're rising at the moment, but they're expected to drop back again through the crystal ball.
And I have a very, very basic question, if I may. Did someone? This is around the liquidity ratio. That when I did that with my calculator on the phone, if the debt, you add the debt, but you don't add the LGFA debt. Is that right? Into the liquidity ratio?
So all of our debt's included.
When you work it out as per liquidity...
One at a time.
Sorry, should I talk? Or do you want me to
No, Leanne's answering.
Sure. No.
So when you look at our the questions you've raised today around our meeting our covenants and have we got the headroom, then yes we have. We're sitting at about, off the top of my head, 4% at the moment of our total revenue. I think it was 7% of our rates revenue. We haven't exceeded our 10% of all our assets. Looking at 250% of total income, we can borrow, I'm not saying we would, but we could borrow up to around 167 mil. We're sitting at 85.6 of external debt. At the moment, we're sitting in a really good place. We will be bringing to council, as we've discussed, a conversation around some of our buildings and what is going to be finally determined at a later date.
Sure, thank you. Can I finish my question? Yep, sure. I'm just looking at the liquidity ratio.
Page.
Page, the same page.
Which page is that same one?
Treasury Bancorp report, second page in from that. I worked that liquidity ratio as 14.1 million plus 85.6 divided by 85.6. Is the debt and the LGFA debt the same thing? They're just different column of the same thing. Is that?
It is the same thing.
So we don't have a
So
debt.
we only have LGFA debt.
Thank you. So I found that very confusing because it looks like you've got two pots of debt, one through the.
I understand that, but there could be times where we may choose for some reason to use our bank.
That's right.
So that's why, because this report is generated for every single council.
Yeah.
So for
I
us,
just want to thank you.
yeah, for us, we're just one of the.
Because I was thinking, what the heck? We've got two lots of debt, but our debt is all LGFA debt.
Correct.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
And if you think about it in the future, Mr Mayor, the top number is the one to focus on, because that's the total.
Yes.
It just happens that at the moment the total is all LGFA.
Thank you.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. And just in response to one of Councillor Cameron's question, is it correct that two of the buildings that we are going to sell to help fund our new building can't be sold until we've moved out of them, being the library and the one next door? So there will be a time gap there, and we may have to fund that difference while we wait for that process to happen.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. But you also mentioned sale of assets out in the new business park is going to offset this building. I thought that money was going to be used to future develop the business estate.
I'll just clarify that a little bit better. What we do is we don't borrow in the way a person would borrow a mortgage for set debt. We borrow to manage cash. And so if we've got cash sitting in the bank, we will use that, preferably without obviously running out, before we go and draw down other debt. Does that make sense?
On page 59, you've got an investment portfolio, and you've got 3.1 on term loan out until September 27, yet you're borrowing monies from LG and Z. So why are you investing monies when you're borrowing monies? What's the strategy behind that?
Those particular investments, the interest yields on those are far higher than what the cost of debt would be. So we had to make a choice between whether we pay more money or we get more money back. So with some of our, if we have any excess, we will invest it at the time if we have got the capacity to do so. And the interest rate works out that it's way higher than, so we're getting a bigger chunk in the middle, shall we say, that's not being paid out in lending.
So it's just looking at that yield and recognising that our cost of interest at the moment predominantly is lower, and that's what we're trying to do. Again, it's another way of mitigating some of that cost.
On the assumption that interest rates won't go above what you've locked in at?
Correct.
On that assumption?
Correct. Noting we also have swaps as well. Yeah, no. So we're doing everything under I believe good advice from Bancorp to mitigate our rising cost of interest and to maximise what we can get return on income income and return.
Thank you for that. Any further questions, councillors? Look, there's a recommendation there on page 51. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Happy to move the recommendation that Council receives the Bancorp Treasury Report for the March 2023 quarter.
Seconded, Councillor Brown. Any speakers for or against the motion? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Well done. Item number 12, financial reports. And we have the financial reports in front of us. Go through them page by page 63, 64, 65. Just note on page 65, the finance costs, you've used your budget already, but you haven't got to the end of the year. What are you doing to manage that? under expenditure.
Through the chair, hopefully we will eventually, by the end of the year, get a better return on our income interest to offset.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that reflects the rising costs of debt. So interest rates and the higher rate of interest rates compared to the time we did our budget. Is that correct?
Yeah. Sorry.
So how do you mitigate that by year end?
If you have a look at the budgeted finance income, you'll see that that's made up of interest and dividends. You'll see that that's actually a lot higher than what was budgeted as well, so that offsets.
Yeah.
So we've used excess to put into term deposits, short term, to try and turn that round.
Okay, thank you. 66. 67. 68 and 69. 70, 71. 72, 73. 74, 75. Councillor Wilson.
I note with that in the stockwater costs, as previously stated, that traffic management requirements are adding to the cost of some main race cleaning. Has any work been done to try and look into how that can be alleviated or better managed?
Through the chair, the new national guidelines have just come out this last week, so we have to look at the effect of that and how we're going to deal with those new guidelines. So it's a work in progress at the moment.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make a cautionary comment. However, we don't believe that the revenue coming into the stockwater account is sufficient to manage the network. So while we were doing everything to try and manage costs to the very best of our ability, we think that the reality is Council is going to have to contemplate that the revenue is insufficient to manage the network, and that there's only one answer to that, and that is to think about the revenue we're getting in.
Has that been adjusted for the accounted for in the next year's budget?
It's probably a little light in the budget, isn't it, Neil?
What we did do in next year's budget is we didn't have that 50,000 reduction that was originally planned for the long-term plan. So we requested that we didn't drop 50, that we maintain the same as last year. So we will still be short, but not as bad as we would have been.
And one of the reasons for that shortfall are the maintenance issues at the intakes, and so it's very dependent on, you know, the sort of winter weather that we might get that will have a material impact on the cost of maintaining the network.
Councillor Wilson.
It does add to the urgency of our strategy around closing water races and rationalising the scheme with, you know, the use of partnerships with irrigation schemes and other. So that's quite high on our priority list, though, isn't it, to get that? Because of this is another great reason to do it.
Indeed.
Councillor Lovett.
I was just adding on to that that we probably need to look at who benefits from this, because with less and less farmers on the scheme or users on the scheme, is it a benefit to the whole community with their water race system? Should the whole community be putting a rate into it? We should be looking at that going forward, because you can't keep putting the rates up on those that are left there. That's unfair.
The simple truth is, while it's defined as a stock water network, the only people who benefit are the farmers who stock might access that water. So the real question, which I think you're alluding to, is a huge piece of work around examining all the different functions that the network performs, and then who might benefit from those. But that is a very significant piece of work. At the moment, we have a stock water network. We, as Councillor Wilson talks about, we have a process, very defined process that leads us to close kilometres of the network on an ongoing basis, but we have to follow the process. There's no easy way close it faster or in one big hit, and in the meantime it remains a stock water network, and therefore the benefit of that falls where it falls. If we're to define it as something else, and then have that conversation with the community about who should pay for that network, then that is a completely separate piece of work. At the moment we have a stock water network.
Yeah, it's just you might get pushback from the people that don't want it and want it shut running through their properties, and then you've got the catchment group who are promoting the fish life and everything going on there, and it's a real complex situation, and I think some discussions need to be held.
You could have that discussion in the long-term plan through the revenue and financing policy, which sets who pays for what. And at the moment, the general rate is contributing to the stock water by 10%.
And you're also right, Councillor, it is complex.
Yeah. Page 76, 77. 78, 79. I'm just looking at 79, the elderly person's housing, which is unfavourable by $282,000, and talks about 6 units being permanently down. I don't think 6 units would give you $282,000.
Through the chair, correct. There'll be a combination of timing as well, but there are 6 units down. Other than that, my income is showing, I'm in the capital, that doesn't make sense. Yes, we are down, we're showing that down. I'd need to investigate further what else is missing in there, because you're right, there's only 6 units at the moment that are empty.
However, I think one way to think about it is that the $104,000 is the gap to the year's budget at a moment in time. We're not at the end of the year yet. What we are signalling is that it will be a permanent variance because we're 6 units short. We're not saying that the 6 units is causing the full 104,000.
Correct, and we're signalling 62% of the total year income. So some of that will be brought in over the rest of the year, but there will be a permanent reduction as well, which we needed to signal. I'll detail that out better for our next report.
That'd be fine.
Oh yeah, I've looked at the expenditure numbers.
Yeah. Further explanation next time would be helpful. Councillor Cameron.
Just on the same topic of the elderly person's housing, for the rebuild or refit of those units, that $104, is that the overspend at the moment?
It's a combination. There is, yes, at the moment of timing. That's got nothing to do with that's running the program. Some of that is maintenance. However, I'm also aware that in the maintenance budget is some of the capital spend for a couple of the units that were quite significantly refurbed. Sure. And so that has to be moved to capital.
Okay, so we'll see all that tidied up next time round.
Correct.
And are they on track to be refurbished as per the original?
These 6 are part of the, if you recall the paper we brought to you in September-ish last year, this is part of the Friendship Lane complete rebuild. So we can't refurb them because they're beyond.
Yeah, no, we're putting them down, okay.
Correct, so they're part of this demolition that we showed you on the tour.
Okay.
Are they still there or are they gone now?
They are still there because we've got to go to tender, and we're just doing we're doing all that background work at the moment. We have to go to tender. We're waiting to hear on the outcome of a grant, because if we were successful, we'll be coming back to council to discuss the timing, because that may change the timing.
Thank you. Page 80, 81, 82, 83. 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91.
80. Oh, Richard, sorry. I'd just like to say it's a good outcome in our dividends and interest that some of our, you could say, our investments or our partnerships with Transwaste, that's Cape Valley, is returning good money to the district, and ACL as a CCO is financially secure and working well from these returns, which does benefit all ratepayers.
Correct. Page 92, 93. Just note there the interest rates that you've got don't appear to line up with the interest rates that Bancorp talks of. Bancorp talks 5.92 and 5.97, and if you average those ones there, you won't get anywhere near that. Why is the difference? On page 93.
Sorry, now I'm with you. Bancorp do talk about the weighted average, and that has a combination of more than just our fixed debt. It has the investments as well. So you've got...
It offsets. The weighted average is made up of what it's costing us in debt and how much we're making in interest income. So that offset is what our weighted average cost of capital ends up being. So you might see there that we've got in the report in March, you've got where's the page?
What page are you on, Erin?
Page, yeah. You've got the floating rates and the fixed rates for the external borrowing.
Yep.
And then you have a look over at the investments on page. Just trying. Your numbers are slightly different.
95.
I've got.
Yes, 95.
So if you look at page 95, you'll see the interest rates on our investments brings down the weighted average cost of capital, or what it's costing us to lend. It offsets against that.
So why you're taking account of that here? Why doesn't Bancorp take account of it too and both have the same number?
I'll have to come back to you on that one. I just need to reconcile that, because I was of the understanding they did, because they get all our information.
Yeah.
The weighted number that you're referring to, Mr. Mayor, is that the 3.77 in the Bancorp report? Is that the number? I'm just trying to clarify the number you're referring to.
Here. No.
No.
On page 57 of the Bancorp report, it talks about the current floating rate of 5.52, and it talks about the current floating rate including margin of 5.97.
Oh, yeah.
On page 57. So it's got the interest rates there, the current floating rates. I assume they should match the rates on 93. Same $85 million figures.
So we're talking where he's got the current percentage of fixed debt, the value of the fixed rate, the weighted average cost of fixed instruments.
Yep.
Is that the table?
Yep.
So which one are you feeling is not matching? Sorry, I'm just trying to get my head around the question.
In the Bancorp, they're talking of current floating rate including margin 5.97.
That's current, not a weighted average. That's the current floating rate. I didn't take that as our weighted average of our floating rate.
So the 5.97 is relevant to nothing then? Because the one on 93 is relevant. What do we pay?
No, I think he's trying to signal that's the current floating rate of LGFA at this moment, but I'll go back and clarify that because I can understand the confusion.
So all he's describing then, we're getting a good deal, is that?
I'll go back and check because I can see where it mismatches and I just don't want to second guess that.
Okay, no, thanks for that.
I thought I was nice and clear across that until that one came up.
That's okay.
Yeah, I can see where your confusion is there too.
Sorry, you just missed it.
I can see where the confusion lies there.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Page 94. 95. 96. 97. No further questions. I'll better get a move in a second if that we were Do we move in a second that we receive those reports?
I'll move.
Councillor Lovett. Councillor Todd. All in favour, please say aye. Carried, thank you. Item number 13. Proposed remit to LGNZ. Tony, Neil.
Thank you. Through the Chair, just one amendment to the recommendation 1. I have referred to the LGNZ 2023 conference, and I should have referred to the LGNZ 2023 AGM.
That's point 4.
On the recommendation.
On the recommendation,
Number
sorry.
1. Yes, sorry, that's.
Right.
I'm a newbie at this.
It's also in bullet point 4 as well, but.
It's probably littered throughout the whole report. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Nothing further to add?
Nothing further to add, thank you.
Councillors, questions? To get this report to remit to LGNZ AGM, we need support of 5 councils, is it?
Yes, you do, or else a zone of the LGNZ.
Or the zone?
Or the zone.
Right.
So I have suggested that perhaps the Canterbury Mayoral Forum would be the best place to start, and that would, if we can get support around that table, that would probably give you your 5, which could.
And this needs to be in by when?
The 23rd of May.
Okay, so we've got 3 weeks.
We've got a bit of time, but I need to give everybody else the time.
Yep, so we'll need to work on it tomorrow, really.
Yes, we will.
To get it off to them.
Mr. Speaker, can I just clarify, the 23rd of May is whose date? Needs to be to LGNZ?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the Mayoral Forum meets on the 1st of June, so we would have to think of a process that doesn't wait for the actual meeting.
We'll have to do a letter to the mayors of Mayoral Forum.
Yep, thank you.
Asking for, yep. Questions, councillors, if there's none? Recommendation there. Councillor Ellis, move.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council approves the proposed remit to the LGNZ 2023 AGM on expanded polystyrene and from the construction industry, and that Council approaches the Canterbury Councils to support the proposed remit via the Canterbury Mayoral Forum.
Councillor Cameron, second.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Open for debate. Just looking at the recommendation, the word construction industry, are we just signalling construction out, or is that where the problem is, or should we look at all polystyrene?
Thank you. It's a great question, and it's a rabbit hole that Neil and I have spent a few days down in. The government is making steps on dealing with polystyrene in some bespoke areas, but there doesn't seem to be anything that's happening or signalled in this construction industry waste. So right now there are plans afoot to have, so for example, polystyrene in coffee cups and food packaging, that's all on the way out. The polystyrene in small appliance packaging is also on the way out. It's this larger quantity that seems to be falling into a bit of a void at this stage. Yeah, sorry.
What would be an example of a construction industry polystyrene?
In the building of concrete slabs, polystyrene is typically used to fill voids, to reduce the extra weight in the concrete. So like a waffle shape, those voids will be filled by polystyrene. So it's commonly used, and when they have offcuts and extra bits and pieces, it's these huge chunks of polystyrene that we're directing these efforts at, how we get rid of those.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Todd?
Sorry.
I think, Mr. Mayor, I think we should be incorporating all users of polystyrene. Like this was actually brought to our attention by a local retailer in town, so who's not in the construction industry. So we should be encompassing everyone who uses or has the use of polystyrene to get rid of.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the difficulty for this remit is that the government is already working on product stewardship schemes for some polystyrene. So if we have a remit to go so broad, it'll simply fail, because the government, even if LGNZ was to accept it, the government will be able to say, well, we are. So what we've tried to do, despite the place that it started, which you're 100% right, what we've tried to do is find the place that has got a significant amount and doesn't yet have a scheme initiative underway, it is a refinement of where this started. We completely accept.
Councillor Cameron?
Two comments, please. When we brought this up, there was a comment that the building industry doesn't have a lot of polystyrene waste. Is that actually not correct now? Because the person that brought it up to us said there's a hell of a lot of polystyrene waste from buildings, but we were told around this table that no, they don't. Or is it anticipated they will?
Thank you. Through the chair, certainly with the new standards that have just come in with building and the high insulation requirements, polystyrene can be a product that is used. Justin did give me an example of a builder who showed up with a trailer load of polystyrene, and that was from one single house build.
So our discussion was actually, there was a few errors in our earlier discussion.
I wouldn't like to comment.
Yeah, I think in our previous discussion, what we thought was intended with construction polystyrene was the wrappers around fridges and appliances in the building of a new house, and that we assumed that was what was being referred to, but we've subsequently found out about the other construction polystyrene, and that's.
Yeah, because that's what we heard about in our discussion from the particular person.
Yep.
The other comment I make, which is I totally support this remit, but the other conversation was this does not reduce the pressure on the council and the waste to deal with polystyrene as it is in Ashburton at the moment. Is that correct? We have still got some system to deal. I see the fees and charges.
Yes, so from the 1st of July, we will have a charge for these larger quantities of polystyrene, and we have an arrangement we've just got to pay for the transport, so the fees will just pay for the transport of the larger quantities to Christchurch where it'll be recycled.
So that will be, so we're a conduit, ADC is a conduit to get this truck down from Christchurch to pick up the polystyrene, because these particular people are struggling to get it up to Christchurch.
Now, that's a separate thing we are investigating, and we are in discussions with the recycler to see if we can assist the local businesses with that. The one I'm referring to is just the larger quantities that we receive at the Resource Recovery Park.
Okay.
But we are also trying to be a conduit for local industries and talking to the recycler.
Thank you, Neil, because I understand the government is definitely trying to reduce polystyrene, but obviously a lot of these products are imported from Asia and other countries where they don't necessarily listen to the New Zealand government and their incentives to reduce polystyrene. So if we can deal with it, would be great. Will we get feedback on that as you address? Will you come back to council and tell us that?
Yes, we'll certainly, in the activity briefing, we'll update you on the progress of that.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Further speakers for or against? Right to reply.
Thank you. Obviously fully support this. In my other life, with these changes that have just happened to the building code, we are seeing a big increase in sales of polystyrene just used for infilling around insulation, and there's going to be a lot of wastage.
I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, that's Tony. Item 14, Mayor's Report. I'll just add there's a planting on for the coronation of the King on Saturday at the Domain in Ashburton, 9:30, planting a tree, and then at the Harris Scenic Reserve at 10:30. So all welcome to attend the tree planting. Any questions for the Mayor's Report? I'll move the Mayor's Report. Any seconder?
I'll second.
Further debate? Any debate? I put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. That takes us to being on 250, which is the welcome to new staff. And Katie Perry will introduce new staff and long serving. It's on mine. Welcome, Katie. Floor's yours.
Right. I am very pleased today to be introducing two new employees to you all this week. And then we also have a number of staff for service recognition as well. But firstly, I'd like to introduce Mark Lowe. Can you stand up, Mark, and give everyone a wave? I believe many of you have met Mark already, but he has joined Tony Durham's team as the Strategy and Policy Manager. He previously has done a similar role at Timaru District Council, so brings a wealth of experience to ADC. We also... No, we're missing one, so we've only got one today. I'll follow up where she went. Maybe we're a bit, okay. In terms of our staff recognition this week, we've got 4 staff that we'll be recognising. First of all, can Rick Catchpole please stand up? Excellent. So Rick has been recognised for 10 years service as our Environmental Monitoring Manager at ADC. On talking to Jane about Rick, she said he has seen some significant legislative change in his area over the past 10 years, with the introduction of the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act and the Food Act. Both acts have are markedly different to what preceded them and required the development of new practices and procedures, including the establishment and ongoing oversight of the District Licensing Committee for alcohol applications and a risk-based model for food operators. The creation of FENS marked the end of his responsibility for rural fire in the district, but this has been counteracted by the growth and responsibilities of civil defence and emergency management. A big thanks to Rick for your commitment and service to ADC. Next up we have Hayley Dixon. Hayley has been recognised for 5 years service with ADC. She started in 2018 as an after-school library assistant, and then in 2021 she moved into her current role as a customer services in the customer services team at the EA Network Centre. Hayley's manager Wendy said Hayley started at EA Network Centre in the midst of us changing from Gladstone to MVibe online booking system. She quickly learnt both programs and has never been scared to test the systems. We have seen her confidence grow in her role, and she is passionate about EA Network Centre. She has made a great impression on our staff and clients. Hayley is our queen of purchase orders and stock. She is the go-to girl by many staff members. Hayley shows patience and reliability and is a valued member to the customer services team. Thank you, Hayley, for your great service and commitment to ADC. Next up, we have Lisa Curdy. Lisa is also from the EA Network Centre, and she's been recognised for 5 years service as one of our EA Network Centre cleaners. On talking to Dave, Lisa's manager, he described Lisa as incredibly hardworking, cooperative, loyal and friendly. At times, this can be a very demanding role with plenty of variety, and Lisa is always happy to help wherever she is needed throughout the facility. A big thanks to Lisa for all her hard work. And finally, we have Ellie Dwyer. Ellie has also been recognised for 5 years service at ADC as a facility assistant. On talking to Courtney, her manager, she says she's not only great at keeping our facilities clean, but she's also willing to help out across the team and really stepped up to help the civil defence team during the floods. Courtney, her manager, said Ellie is a person that every team needs as she brings joy and laughter each and every day. Ellie is a fun, bubbly, hardworking and loyal team player with a positive attitude. Each morning you'll be guaranteed to hear the team laughter in the staff room as Ellie regales the team with her younger days stories. A big thank you to Ellie and her loyalty and service to ADC. Courtney.
It's written and said, so it must be true. So thank you, and well done to the long-serving staff. Well done, great achievement. And the new staff, new starts, just one here today. May your employment be productive and enjoyable in your time you're having with ADC. So thank you very much, and thank you, Katie, for doing that job. Council, that takes us to the end of open part of the meeting. So we'll break now for afternoon tea and resume here at 3:15. Thank you.